Hello, I'm Michael Verney and welcome to the Irish Independent's weekly GAA Championship preview video. Delighted to be joined by Frank Roache. Frank, how are you?
Very well, Michael. Enjoying the sunshine?
Yes, definitely. I'm sure there's a lot of players enjoying the sunshine as well. A lot of big games this weekend as well. We'll start with football because we've two big provincial finals, and I suppose we're hoping one of them might end up something like the Connacht final last weekend, which was an absolute thriller and right down to the end. But the All-Ireland champions are probably the place to start. Saturday evening, an unusual day maybe for an Ulster final, and maybe put some noses out of joint. But Armagh against Donegal, a repeat of last year's final that went to penalties. What are you expecting here? Could be a cracking game.
I think they should just go straight to penalties. Now, the only problem with that is that we'll miss out on 2 hours of great entertainment. This is a really, really hard game to call. And history tells us that. There wasn't anything between them last year. The rivalry has developed even more so since Jim McGuinness came back in charge of Donegal. Before he did, Donegal had kind of disappeared off the All-Ireland map. Now, an awful lot of people have them as their kind of, I won't even say dark horses. They're not dark horses. They're a lot of people's favourites for the All-Ireland. But the fascinating thing about Saturday's game is that even though Sam Maguire is the prize that both counties ultimately want, Ulster is huge for them. Jim McGuinness, in both his reigns in charge of Donegal, has gone bald-headed after an Ulster title. That has been his preferred route to success. And everyone knows that Kieran McGeeney, despite winning the All-Ireland last year, has gone a decade, in pursuit of the holy grail of an Ulster title, and he's never got it.
This is their big one to try and... They won the All-Ireland last year. They say, it's not quite the same as an All-Ireland, but it'd be massive for them. And you hear about when teams haven't won a provincial title in a long time, even going back to the Clare hurlers in 95 or 97, the provincial nearly meant as much as the All-Ireland, and it would be huge for Armagh.
It would be, and in a way it has echoes, I think, of last Sunday in Castlebar, because Galway were going for 4 in a row history. They had something really on the line. But it felt down there in Castlebar that it was even more important to Mayo, that this team needed to win. They needed to win silverware for Kevin McStay, and they came up short. Now, I think we're going to see something similar this Saturday. I think the quality might be better. Not that Galway are not at that All-Ireland level at the minute, but I just think these are two of the... If you were to pick an All-Ireland winner from 5 counties at the minute, and it is a wide open race, these two would definitely be in that handful.
Yeah. Just on the other provincial final at the weekend, were you in Croke Park 15 years ago? For the famous Joe Sheridan goal?
I most
definitely
was in Croke Park. And the funny thing I remember about that day, it was very unusually for a Leinster football final at the time. It was a 2 p.m. throw-in. It was the early game on RTE. And the World Cup final was on that night. And as back then I was working full-time with the Herald, Dublin footballers were very much on their beat. And suddenly they were not in a Leinster final. And I was thinking innocently that I'd have all my work boxed off and plenty of time to walk across the road to the Croke Park Hotel and watch the start of the World Cup final. Myself and Gordon Manning, I think it was. Can't remember where Gordon was working at the time. He's now at the Irish Times. But the two of us were scrambling across the road to get in the last 20 minutes of extra time. It was the craziest day one of the craziest days I can ever remember on this job, all because of that goal, inverted commas, and the chaos that followed. It was pure bedlam. Everyone knows what happened. Everyone can see it should not have been a goal. And it was absolute heartbreak for Louth in the context of a county appearing in their first Leinster final in half century, and they hadn't won one in 53 years.
I think Joe Sheridan actually took the World Cup final off the back page, nearly every back page, because that was the only thing anybody was talking about. It's funny the way it worked out. What will we be talking about on Monday morning? Will we be talking about Louth ending a massive famine, or will we be talking about Meath having backed up that Dublin win and getting their hands on the Leinster trophy for the first time in 15 years?
It's a bit like the Ulster final, and for different reasons. It's a really close call, hard game to call. I was at Louth's semi-final against Kildare, and in one respect, we're very, very lucky to win it. Kildare did everything bar win it in terms of early domination, then even against the wind, dominating the possession stakes in the second half, missing goal chances or being denied by the Louth keeper. And Louth were just that bit more clinical and got across the line. They did so with huge contribution from skipper Sam Mulroy, who was back after an injury, and even more so their all-star Craig Lennon, who kicked 4 points from play from wing back and had a big hand in the goal. If you were to look at the two semi-finals in isolation, performance-wise, Louth against Kildare, Meath against Dublin, you'd say Meath are favourites, definitely. It was a huge performance from Meath. Now, I watched it on TV afterwards. It was the best I've seen Meath play in a championship match in a long, long time, and it had to be, even against an off-colour Dublin. But then you take a step back and you think Louth inflicted a pretty comprehensive defeat on Meath in the league this year, right at the end, when they had to get a win to ensure they're
down a lot of bodies as well.
They were down bodies, and they beat them well, and they beat them even more emphatically in the All-Ireland group stages last year. They hit Meath for 3 goals. So I think if you look at where Louth have been coming from over the last few years, their experience of playing in Leinster finals, they will never have a better chance, I think, to end this famine, which is now, my God, what is it, 57? I can't even do the maths on how many years ago that is. Like, we're heading for 3/4 of a century, the mind half a century. But it really, it boils down hugely on the day, but also how Meath react to the huge bounce they'll have got from beating Dublin. They may not play as well the next day. They may not have to, but it's totally different circumstances. I just have a slight leaning towards Louth. The experience they've built up over the last few years under Mickey Hart and now Ger Brennan, and the fact that they've got some really key players back in fitness and up to match sharpness as well. I think it might sway in their direction, but like nothing would surprise me here.
Yeah, sport has a mad history of whoever has taken down, the big gun that we're going on this big sequence. You look at Cork beat Limerick last year, going for the drive for 5, couldn't win the final. You look at Mayo beating Dublin in 2021, going for 7 in a row, and the other team hasn't been able to back it up. So that will be fast.
The one thing I would say is Louth will have to play better, though.
Yeah.
I think if they repeat the performance that they had in Tullamore the last day, Meath will win.
Yeah. Just to briefly touch on the Tailteann Cup, obviously kicks off this weekend. A couple of the standout games, Mayo and County Offaly against Wicklow. Wicklow had a great performance against Dublin. Maybe you would say the form wasn't subsequently franked, maybe from a Dublin point of view. And your own county, Westmeath, obviously having won the inaugural Tailteann Cup, they're playing against Antrim. But it's also a big hurling weekend, and there's a bit of a winner takes all kind of a feel to a couple of games, particularly the one in Munster and a big game in Leinster. We'll just start in Munster. Tip and Clare is the only show in town on Saturday. Both need to win to stay alive. You were obviously on the beat back in the day during the 90s when some of these great games were being played between them. This is all an element of that to it. It's nearly like knockout championship.
Oh, like it is, because if you just even do the maths on it, like whoever loses here will have 1 point after 3 rounds, 1 game to go, and it's all but impossible to qualify from there. I mean, there might be some vague permutation where they could escape if A beats B and B beats C and what have you, but I just can't see it happening. And you take Clare, for example, their last day is a trip to Limerick. And given how impressive Limerick looked the last day, and the issues Clare have had all season with availability of key personnel, the trouble they've had at the back, especially the goals they're leaking, the heavy scores they shipped, not just in the championship so far, but in the league as well. It's really all on the line for them. The atmosphere in Ennis, I'd say, is just going to be electric. And there's been a great bond between this Clare team and their supporters, and they'll be hoping that can push them over the line. And then you've got Tip, who, after day 1, they must have been feeling very happy about themselves, getting the draw against Limerick, and then disaster before the bell even.
I wonder, will they be able to write that off as a result of that? Whereas if it had just been 15 on 15 and they've been beaten 15 points, you're kind of thinking, how will they recover from this? Whereas they have kind of a legitimate excuse almost.
They have, but they can't get too wrapped up in that either, like. They were still, beating up a stick the last day. It was 14 men, and as we've seen in the early weeks of the hurling championship, when you're a man down, the teams are so clever at retaining possession now compared to even like 20 years ago. It was a different game. We had many stories of 14 men, heroic last stands and surviving. It's more difficult now. But God, if you're to pick a winner, there's more in Clare at the minute. We haven't seen enough from Tip over a sustained period to suggest that they're genuine contenders. But like, this will be an opportunity. If Clare are off colour, if they're conceding some of the sloppy goals that we've seen so far in this championship, you know, they could be caught.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see whether we see Tony Kelly or who's going to be available. Will Shane O'Donnell be fast-tracked potentially, because this is essentially a knockout game, so that's going to be fascinating. The big game in Leinster would be Galway against Wexford. Wexford obviously turned them over last year. It was one of those mad ones where the script was totally ripped up because Keane Byrne was sent off early and Wexford were there was just no nonsense about them, and they beat them well in the wind-up. Both teams have been, Galway stuttered definitely the first day against Kilkenny, were very, very poor. Wexford would maybe feel a bit aggrieved over the penalty call the last day against Dublin. How do you see this going? Like, this is on a bit of a knife edge as well. And Dahi Burke more than likely going to be missing from a Galway point of view as well.
Like, if you go back 12 months to that famous victory for Wexford, I mean, the week before, the fortnight ago, their previous match had been up in Antrim and they were beaten.
Yeah.
And they were seen as at a low ebb, like, where can they come from this? And they summed the performance from, we won't say nowhere, but it was the blew Galway away and Galway had the extra man. Galway are just so hard to fathom. Like, I mean,
their 4 defeats this year, Frank, were all by 12 points, and they bounced back really well the next day. But you're just not sure what you're going to get.
You don't know. It's Jekyll and Hyde, like, with this Galway team, and like against Kilkenny, bar the first 20 minutes when they were well in the contest and they had plenty of possession. They just looked very, very poor. They looked a distinctly average team. And especially if you take Cathal Mannion out of the equation at the minute, he's been really good in both matches so far. But without his scores, you're wondering where they're going to come from. Fact they're at home this time should help them, but they've lost in Pearse Stadium before as well, including I think it was against Tip in the first round of the league. They were beaten by 12 points that night. So it's all on the line, and there's pressure on Micheál Donoghue because he came back here as the Messiah, second coming. Can he lift them after the years where they essentially fell flat under Henry? But if Galway don't qualify for a second year in a row, there's going to be serious questions asked. And several of this team, especially the ones who are survivors from 2017, we may not see them back again.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. A brilliant weekend ahead with 2 provincial football finals, and particularly those 2 hurling games, which are going to decide really how the championship plays out for those teams involved. We'll be back again next week to preview all the weekend's action again.